Hello, it's Colette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I am just want to really get something off my chest and something that I've been going through and experiencing recently with work with my teacher. As we had a discussion, really something that had been triggering and poking me a little bit was uh, just seeing the rise of spiritual teachers that are coming online and coming out of the woodwork, and with the offerings that are out there. And some of them really scare me. Some of them really have worried me that people are offering certain things without any prior training or without any deep knowledge. Now, I'm not somebody who really believes in like deep regulatory systems. In fact, I have for many years been a member of a yoga alliance, and I decided this this pandemic of when I've been trying to sort out things that need to go, was to deregister my school from one of the biggest yoga bodies who certified my teacher training. And the reason I decided to do that is because the amount of money that they were charging for certification and authority, and I have many, many hours of qualifications being a yoga teacher because I spent 20 years doing workshops, trainings, teachings. I've got thousands and thousands of hours of teaching yoga, and they see me as a senior teacher, and what they wanted to do when they accredited me with this badge or label is they wanted to charge me for it. It's like, don't think so. So yeah, and every time I registered a program, there was a different set of fees and a different label and a different amount of money, and really wasn't getting the support from that authority for the work I was doing. So I decided to pull out. Now, I'm seeing a lot of people teaching things online that they're not qualified to teach. For example, there's lots of words like womb shaman, womb teacher, one-to-one sessions, soul guide, spirit guide. It's really, really, it's like walking on ice. The reason I decided to do my therapeutic studies was because I realized that I needed some knowledge, wisdom, teaching from credible people who have years of experience of working in mind body therapy. And even with experience, even with knowledge, even with class-based hours and hours, you can still get it wrong. So if I'm dealing with clients, there's always the potential that you can re-traumatize. There's always a potential that you can create damage or not handle something in the right way because we're humans. And I see that the more training that you do, the more wisdom, the more people that you allow to come into your life who have years of this practice and theory and study and time with clients, they can show you those pitfalls. Of course they can. They can teach you what to look out for. So I'm currently studying therapeutic trauma and trauma first aid with Peter Levine, who's a very famous somatic trauma teacher, and the stuff that he's giving me is incredible. It's 40 years of clinical practice and the healing that he's done with people, thousands of people, and the pitfalls that he's experienced, and the knowledge of how the body works and how we can re-traumatize people, how we can't directly go into traumas or wounds, and so for me it's given me a lot of safety and safety for my clients. When we deal with human people and the human psyche, we're holding a hot potato. The life, the way of living, the pains, everything is being handed over to us in that therapy session, and we really need to know how we work with boundaries, what boundaries there are, and how to deal with situations when they get out of hand, or how you can put people into trauma, what trigger words, associations cause people to fall into deeper trauma. There's lots to it. And I was listening to the lecture yesterday, and obviously when I'm doing things, I'm always listening to podcasts and lectures. I have a thirst for knowledge. I truly believe there's an inner guru inside our body, and there's an inner teacher and inner guide, but I am not in my ego enough to say that I am self-led and that I have all the answers. That's a huge mistake, and I'm seeing it loads on the internet, loads of people saying you are your own guru. Of course, your intuition and your own guidance and your own knowledge is what you should follow. But you have to be open to the fact that you're also limited by your own experience and your own, practice. So, for example, I had there was a lecture about yoga the other day, and they were saying, like, would you place all of your life in the hands of, say, a yoga teacher that had done a 200-hour yoga practice and yoga training? Would you hand everything over to them? And of course you wouldn't, because 200 hours, and I train people in a 200-hour certification, is not enough to be really handling people's mental, social, spiritual, all of that kind of health. It really isn't. It gives you a foundation to understand asana and a brief little, insight into how, for my training anyway, how the emotional body works, how the parasympathetic system works. But it is by no means the qualification to go out and say, okay, I can start healing people now. That's really frightening. It's common knowledge. We already know that you will kind of attract people where you're up to. So, if you're an asana-based teacher and you're just teaching physical posture, then that's where you are, and that's fine. And you will get people who are coming for that. And so we have to acknowledge where we are and who we're catering for. So, for example, I had a situation with a client who had gone into psychosis, and I am not qualified to deal with psychosis. Working with someone in a psychotic state takes a psychologist who specializes in that. And that's when we have to come to the point of referral. So I was unable to work with that person anymore and say, this is beyond my qualification, beyond my experience, beyond what I know, and I'm going to lead you to somebody who can work with that. There is the same labels going around with, I work with a womb teacher for 4 to 5 years on womb healing, womb alchemy, Christed womb work. I went to another womb shaman that I worked on for other reasons. And there is trained in those disciplines. I trained to be a womb teacher, but I still have reservation on, actually labeling myself as a womb teacher. What does that mean? How much wisdom do I have in that? How many hours have I put into that, in my own self-healing and in my own one-to-one movement with that in my life? And that's what we should all be questioning. I know that I naively have in the past gone to teachers and not asked for credentials, not said, how many years have you been doing this? What are your not qualifications, because not all qualifications are valid, but what's your experience? How many hours have you sat with that modality? And that is key. It's really important. People can pretend to do everything, heal the womb, channel, do all of these things. And many of those people that are doing it are people who have not done the hours themselves under a master. We have a world full of masters who have dedicated their life to certain disciplines, to certain healing modalities. They're the ones I love to learn off. They fill me with their knowledge and their wisdom and their practical experience, and that's then where I take that knowledge and begin to embody it. I do the practices, I take the healings, I go through these initiations with the master until it's completely embodied and I'm in a different place, and then I can share with people the new place I arrived at from that. So someone, well, it was a yogi said to me, a swami, a teacher said to me, you wouldn't go to somebody and take French lessons off them if they had not studied French, would you? Nope. They might say, well, I learned French, right? They wouldn't have the same grasp of it as someone who had gone and studied it deeply. And so that made me think about the people who I was working with. What was the past? What was their experience? What path have they walked? Can I see a difference to who they were and what they are now? And who they are now, is that having a really good impact on people? Are they having a really beautiful impact? Are they compassionate? Are they giving things in exchange? Are they working ethically and morally? Or they're just doing what they're doing to be famous, to be a spiritual teacher, because they've got no other job? Or are they doing it just to make money? They want to come out there and make money from people, and they've not put the time and the effort and the hours into training. So that's basically what I'm asking. It doesn't matter to me those teachers are doing that, because at the end of the day, everything you sow, you reap. And that always comes back to us, always, ethically, morally, it's not right. And so that comes back to them. But what I want to say in this video is, for those of you who are looking for teachers and looking for people to work with, is really do your investigation. Don't be frightened to ask the teacher who their teacher is, who taught you, where does your wisdom come from? And be very, very careful of the one that says, I'm the guru, I'm self-taught, I'm the inner guru, I don't read books, I don't learn from others. Because I could bet you £1 million that there is ego attached to that statement. We as students, and if you read any of sacred texts, if you're into listening to the masters who speak, they are the most humble people. Yesterday I was listening to a podcast from very, very secret and well-known teacher in the Himalaya. He very rarely speaks, and when he does, he has very something important to say about his meditative state. And he's the guy in Himalaya who will teach his students they can steep into the icy waters of the Himalaya in winter and produce so much body heat that steam comes off their body, and they raise their body temperatures to be able to adjust to the climate there. So they're doing deep meditation, and he has meditated for a minimum of 2 hours per day for the last 40 years. So he speaks a walked path, and he was delivering the message of what he's seeing in the West at the moment, about the amount of teachers that have not done any study. And it's just a simple rule, isn't it? You know, to teach, you need to study. I was an English teacher for many years in schools, and I couldn't teach English without going and learning from the masters, Wordsworth, Shakespeare, from all the language specialists that I learned under. They taught me so much that I came with this huge knowledge bank ready to come into a classroom and find my own way to deliver that, find my own teacher to deliver that information, and that was tried and tested through essays and examinations. And that's what made me a teacher. I couldn't walk into a school today and say, okay, I'm an English teacher because I speak English. It's exactly the same. Why is it different for these modalities that we're working in? What qualifies them as a teacher to teach and guide you? What does their outside world look like? And not the one they portray in the persona, but the truth. I often find teachers give off this kind of energy of being, you know, having a beautiful lifestyle, and they might be racked with debt and living from the government or what. So we can't really ever find that out. But that teacher, if they've not gone into that self-inquiry, haven't gone into a deep enough initiation to be teaching somebody else. So I think that's my biggest message that I'm trying to get across is, all you beautiful people looking for guidance and looking for soul work and looking to go inwards, really please do look for the credentials and know what it is you're looking for, and know that you have access to people who have been tried and tested, who have, you know, years of not just glittery testimonies, oh, it was so good, it was brilliant, I felt great, but how it changed their life, what changed for them, how is their life different because of them. And that's the key. The teachers that are in this world working ethically, who have put the hard time into the studies, into the self-study, into the self-work, are and will be shown, like time will show those people, and time will also reveal those people who are taking this very sacred and very, very sensitive work very lightheartedly, or because they want an empire or to make huge amounts of money. And that's very sad, and that's destroying the sacredness of this work. And I, over the last 20 years, have most certainly seen this spiritual world become very diluted with entrepreneurs, shall we say, coming into spiritual positions and professing to teach from a very, very limited knowledge base and experience base. So watch out, make sure that you do your research when you want to work with someone. Find somebody who's done the work themselves, who's humble, who isn't looking for just to take your money and or to be famous or to have a certain persona on social media, but someone that genuinely cares about what it is you've come to them for, and the walk of life has led them to where they are in their studies and their masters, so that they can steer you also into that place. So thank you all for listening, and hope to speak to you all soon. Take care.